All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Perspective. I'm here with Shoney Ivens. Shoney and I actually go back a little ways. We've known each other
Really?
since, what was it, high school?
Man, it's been a while. It's been
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
But yeah, so I know Shoney. I've known Shoney for a little bit. But hey, can you go ahead and introduce yourself? You know what you're up to, what you're doing right now.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in direct sales for the past 7 years. Majority of that time was door knocking, so straight door to door guerrilla marketing, and then I transitioned 4 years ago. I started to invest in real estate, and it was something I was doing personally as an individual at that time, and started training some of the people that I was leading in door to door also to be able to invest in real estate, and that actually transitioned into a full time occupation for me about 6 months ago. Completely got out of door-to-door sales and transitioned into real estate. So now I focus on helping people to build a future when it comes to like a wealth financial plan around real estate. So
Sweet.
yeah.
So I'm really curious because, like I was saying, we've known each other for a little while now, but I think the last time I actually really talk with you face to face, like we were both going to college.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious, how did you even get started into the direct sales?
Yeah. It's interesting. So I actually got approached by a friend. So I was doing phone sales at the time to pay my way through school. I was going to UVU, and I had a friend who said, "Hey," because I was working part time and going to school full time. And my friend was like, "Hey, how would you like to be able to make what you're making in an entire year, but condense that into 4 months just in the summer? And then you could go back to school and focus, strictly on school, not have to do this part-time thing where you're dividing your time between work and school." And for me, it was like that freedom aspect of being able to devote myself to school, getting good grades, those things that we've been taught.
Mhm.
That was a big win for me. And so I in the beginning, it wasn't about like the money or the success. It was just about like, hey, this is a means to be able to save time. And so went out for my first summer and had an amazing experience. I should say it was a very disruptive experience because it wasn't really organized, but it was very beneficial in the way that it really helped me to grow in important ways. And that summer, I ended up making about $35,000, which was more than I was making at my previous job for an entire year, right? And that's when I really caught the vision of sales and like what this could be, because I still felt like I was an infant when it came to understanding sales, the psychology of influencing people. And so I started to realize like there was some potential there. If I really focused on developing the skill set of sales, then there could be a bigger picture ahead. And so actually right after that summer, I decided not to go back to school and dropped out of college after that first year. And then things just evolved year after year, and it just turned into an amazing opportunity and experience, and really just changed my life.
Cool. So real quick, so you dropped out after your first year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, did you have any, whether from family or friends, any like pressure or like, oh, that you're being stupid, or any like backlash from that decision?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I had, and this is, I think, one of the big success principles is like surrounding yourself with people who support your vision, your dreams, and the things that are important to you, and really trying to like rid yourself of all negativity or influences that could negatively impact your mindset. And so like I feel like maybe it was by luck or by chance. I don't think I was really aware of it at that time in life, but I had really gotten to a point where I had like positive people in my life at that time. And so like I didn't ever hear like people saying that I wasn't going to make it or that I couldn't be successful. Like you might see some stuff online, right, where it's like people don't believe in sales. And I got that a lot from customers. Like I can't tell you how many times I've knocked on a door and somebody just tell me go get a real job, right? And little do they know how much money individuals knocking doors were making. And so I was blessed to have good people behind me who they trusted what I was going towards, which was just like the best route for myself, right? I felt like it was a way to growth. And maybe that was because also I was really passionate about it and people could see that. And, it wasn't this vision of like a get rich opportunity for me. It was more of like, hey, I like the skill sets that Door to Door is providing me with. And for the next couple of years, I'm going to double down on those skill sets and not focus on, this education aspect, because I felt like that was my schooling. And there were far more valuable skill sets that I learned in that setting than I could have learned in school, because for me, school was not something that I've ever been very good at, because I have a very short attention span. And it was hard for me to be able to acclimate to things like the testing and kind of like the structure that we have in our school educational system. And so, yeah, kind of to condense it, go back to your initial question, is like I had great people behind me supporting me the entire way.
Oh, that's perfect. That's actually really good to hear. Because, unfortunately, that's not what everyone gets, whether it's dropping out of college, whether it's doing something that's not traditional, sometimes you get that backlash,
Totally.
So
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, so what advice would you give to someone, whether they're in college right now, whether they're maybe considering switching careers? What advice would you give to someone who just, they see an opportunity, they want to go for it, but maybe don't have that support that you had?
That support, totally. So this comes from a book. One of my favorite books is called 12 Pillars by Jim Rohn. And he talks about how one of the success pillars is surrounding yourself with the best people. And so it's like you have to get very aware and like consciously start thinking about the network that you're currently surrounded with. That comes to your friends, your family members, the people you go to school with, people that you work with, really anybody that has a lot of time that you're spending with. And what you have to do is get very clear about what are their values. And first, I should back up. You actually need to decide what your values are, right? What's really important to you, and then start to associate with people who have similar visions, values, and goals as you. And so it's like you have to get very selective, and be okay with like some people not supporting that goal or vision that you have. And the thing that's important to realize is that it's not their vision. Like somebody else doesn't need to have the vision for you to be successful, right? So it's like whatever you're feeling called towards, you need to commit to yourself and to your vision, your own journey, not to the stories and kind of the outward influences of other people. But a big piece of that is making sure that when you dial in and decide what your vision is, you need to start surrounding yourself with people who support that vision and who have the right values that also align with your values.
Dude, that's perfect. I actually really like that answer. So kind of, I want to go back, to when you first got into direct sales.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know like full story, but you did mention that you had some disorganization and everything.
Yeah.
So what were some of the challenges, whether it was the disorganization, what were some of the challenges that you had, I guess, that you faced when you first started?
Yeah. So I got to tell a quick story to like help preface it to make sense. So with the door-to-door game, we would always move out of state. So it was never like where you grew up, right? So I was living here in Utah where I'm familiar with. And for that summer, they said, hey, we're all moving to Dallas, Texas. And I was excited about it. I was 21 at the time. And for me, being able to go out and explore another part of the country and meet new people and kind of just be in a different environment was exciting. And we go out, there's 22 of us that ended up going out for that summer to Dallas. And about 2 weeks into the summer, our manager, the leader of that group, quit. And the other 21 guys were all what we call rookies. So that was like their first experience knocking doors. It wasn't like anybody was a veteran in the industry. And, as soon as the leader left, it was kind of like everybody was in a complete state of uncertainty. Like they didn't know what to do. Like we didn't have our pitches dialed in. We didn't have the processes in place, the structure, the strategy. None of that was developed yet. And so when our leader left, it kind of created this domino effect and everybody just started to leave. Guys were like, no, there's no way for me to survive. Mm-hmm. And it got down to 3 of us. Myself, my good friend, Eddie Schofield, who went to high school with me, and then another buddy of ours, Josh Johnson. And we had the regional fly out to our area in Dallas, Texas. And he's like, guys, pack your things, you're moving. And he's like, I'm going to move you to another office in Los Angeles. And it's all veterans. They don't do, it's not as structured as what this office was set up to be, where we're training a lot of new guys. This is one where it's going to be more of a crowd that's been doing this for 3, 4, 5 years. And so there's not like the consistency with the meetings and all the structure that you need, but at least you'll be surrounded with other producers. And so we went out there, that was about 3.5 weeks into this summer program. And we get to LA, and California is one of the tougher areas, I would say, for new sales reps. I wouldn't say it's tougher than any other place in the country. I've sold everywhere from East Coast to West. But the difference is that it's saturated. It is hit year round because it's warm weather. And you get all different kind of companies. You have pest control, you have security, you have solar, you have just so many different things that people are getting bombarded with on a daily basis. And so it's natural for them to be able to be very short and brief when you knock their door. So you have to be very quick at catching people's attention, breaking preoccupation, and getting in rapport with people. And that's something that's a little bit more of an advanced, technique for a sales individual. And so we, at our first year, 3 weeks into the process, didn't have those gifts or those skill sets cultivated yet. And so the challenges came where we didn't have, leadership. We'd have these meetings, and there would be leaders, what I would call leaders, or more better term for them was experienced sales reps. They weren't really leaders, who would, kind of mock guys who were not selling. And so it wasn't like this environment where it's like, hey guys, you're doing great. Like, here's some new techniques to practice out there. Is like, hey, if you don't sell today, you should probably go get a job at 7-Eleven or McDonald's. And so it was like not a very positive atmosphere at all. But I had quit my job, and one of the interesting things is my manager from the call center I was working with, he said that he's like, just so you know, most guys in door-to-door fail. And he's like, I don't believe that you're going to make it, so I'll probably see you here in 2 months asking for a job. And for me, I'm very prideful, right? And so like part of like the resistance or the factor that helped me to stick it out that summer was just that, like, hey, I didn't want to go back and try to ask for my job back, which it was a good job. Like, I wouldn't have probably gone and looked for something else because I was getting paid like $20 to $25 an hour. So I was like, man, I can't go back and see not only somebody else deem me as a failure, but I can't in my own conscious, like, be able to commit to something and then give up because the circumstances or the environment wasn't right. And so we stuck it out, and I ended up having a phenomenal summer through sheer, perseverance. And like, really just, it was a time for me to learn a lot about myself and about the level of persistence that I could tap into, and then what results would come from that level of commitment. And, that summer was a pivotal moment in my career, and it's literally changed my life because after that, I was like, if I can handle those kind of circumstances, I can handle anything. And, luckily each summer provided different similar challenges that allowed me to grow in different ways. And so that first summer was one where it's just, we didn't have the full structure in place to really like get the full picture of sales, but it was enough to help us be able to develop the right skill sets.
Dang, like you were answering a question that was just going through my mind. The question was, why didn't you quit? When everyone else was. But man, I don't know if there's very many people who can say they've been through something like that when they first get into a business.
I know, and it's like, and those are like the broader things that were interesting about that year. But if we broke it down, like there was a lot of small details that were like, I'm surprised, like looking back on it, why I didn't like quit or go home or find a different door-to-door company to work with. But at the same time, I think deep down, like everybody, the level of commitment that you have to like yourself and the end product is what really matters. So for me, like the money wasn't actually what I was most excited about for that summer. And if it were, I would have quit. And that's why a lot of people do end up giving up, is because their focus, their goal is usually financial gain or recognition or some kind of outward result that they're looking for, right? But for me, the big picture, and this was from a mentor that I had at the age of 19. And one of the things that he would always say is, like, he said, if you treat a man as he is, he will remain that way. But if you treat a man as he could be and ought to be, he will become who he could be and ought to be. And what that really resonates for me is, like, for me to see myself in the future of who I could become is where all the money's at. Like, that is worth 10 times any amount of money I've made up to this point. It's who I've become in the process of all my goals. That's really important to me. And so at that time, even at 21 years old, what I really wanted was skill sets. I wanted to develop such valuable skill sets that I knew long-term they would benefit me. I didn't know what, in what way would that be financially, or would it be benefit of having powerful connected relationships, a great network? What was that going to be? I didn't know, but I knew that those skill sets of the art of communication, effective negotiation, and being able to build trust in a very short period of time were valuable skill sets to have. And that's why I was willing to go through all of those other things to be able to get those skill sets.
So I'm curious, that desire to build those skill sets, is that something that you've always wanted, or is that something that was more developed your early 20s? When did you want to more invest in yourself?
That really happened. I got a taste of it when I was 19. When I served an LDS mission, and my mission President Peterson, a phenomenal man, and he took it upon himself to really instill principles for success, not only within my church and the gospel, but also within business and in life and relationships. And the biggest thing that I really received from him was a desire to be my best self, the best version of me that I could be. And that was not the case when I was in high school or when I was in middle school or anything like that. My mindset was to put food on the table so that I can eat, right? It was a lot about safety, security, comfort. And it wasn't until I was 19 years old where, luckily, at that age, I would say, for me, I was blessed to have that happen very early on, rather than when I was 25, 30, 40 years old, where I had a realization that my progress and my internal growth was what was priority number one for me. And, over the past 8 years, I've really doubled down on focusing on really becoming the best version of myself in all different, categories of life. And, but it all stemmed from having a powerful mentor who helped me to see the version of myself that I couldn't see at that time, at a young age.
That's awesome. So would you say that mentors, would you say for someone who's younger, getting started in different things, would you advise them to find a good mentor?
Absolutely. That'd be priority number one for me and this is something, again, I would talk about with Jim Rohn. He said, just surround yourself with the best people. And so it's getting yourself into a position where you have mentors, guides, peers, people who are winning in different areas that are important to your life. So for example, some people may focus on their relationships. They may focus on their money. They may focus on their physical state, right? How healthy they are. And it's whatever area you're trying to grow in, if I want to be able to live a healthier life, I'm going to find somebody who's already living a healthy life and mimic what they're doing. If I want to be financially successful, I'm going to go and find mentors who are already doing great in that realm. And also understand that the mentors you choose don't have to cover every area of life, right? I've had great mentors who are amazing financially. They understand the game of wealth, but they're not great with building relationships, right? And so what I'm going to do is pick and choose the things that I want to learn from each individual and upgrade those into, my life. And, but yeah, that's step number one to getting started with really getting the life that you want, is finding those mentors, those people that you can surround yourself with who are further along on the path. It's not that they're better than you. It's just that they've already figured something out. And so simply getting around those people as much as possible can actually help you fast track your way to success.
Awesome. So right now, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, the 17-year-old kid in Oakland or, in wherever it might be, who maybe doesn't have the best circumstances at the moment, maybe doesn't have maybe not in the best neighborhood. Where would you recommend, or what thoughts do you have for someone like that who's maybe wants to get a mentor, wants to surround themselves with maybe more positive and supportive people?
Yeah.
What thoughts do you have around that?
Yeah, I think few things. The number one that comes to my mind is like realizing where we're at in society today and like how the world has evolved. And so like my approach, if I were starting over at that age in that kind of circumstance, I would be really realizing the power of technology and how it's like you don't actually have to be in the same room or work for a person that you need to deem or want to deem a mentor. Like now today, in my life, I have a lot of digital mentors. So people like Ed Milet, Tony Robbins, Gary Vaynerchuk, like a lot of individuals who are killing it in certain areas of life. And I can consume their content anytime. I can wake up at 2 a.m. and be able to watch some of their YouTube videos or check out some of their podcasts. And so like that would be the easiest starting point, and it's free. So it's like an easy route to be able to start getting those right things. And this is an interesting aspect. Another one of my mentors told me that to attract attractive people, you have to become an attractive person, right? So like to attract people who are successful, you have to start becoming that now, whatever you want. So it's like, even if you're wanting to be wealthy, it's like you need to start having those wealth conscious thoughts now, rather than like, once I get the money. I became success, or I got money after I was already successful. And so really it's about like them just starting to do their own development. Reading books is another great way. It's been around for years, right? And so it's like, grab a book. It's like Think and Grow Rich is probably one of the most like easy recognizable book that somebody can tap into. And but then it's like start reading. It's funny actually, on my phone I have, rather than most people on their phones probably have a lot of social media, and we have so many different values that we can get from our phones. But for me, I have more, and you probably can't see this, but I have more stuff that's geared towards like learning and like really upgrading myself than I do of like normal like entertainment, right? The like Instagram, the Facebook. I don't actually have those apps on my phone. Twitter, stuff like that, TikTok, all these things. I have like Audible, I have Blinkist, I have Evernote, I have Elevate, all these things that help me to really cultivate my mind. And so it's like those are very simple routes that people can latch onto until they find the right people that they can actually sit in the room with and be able to learn from those person on a face-to-face basis.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the whole technology, because I mean, we're living in 2020. Like, we are super blessed with all the technology we have. And it's funny even with social media, like you were saying, like, Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, Ed Milet, all of them people, like, it's interesting when I hear someone talk about, social media is bad, I just have to ask, who are you following? Like, yeah. There's no requirement that you have to follow your negative, super political uncle on
right.
Facebook. You can still love them. You can still connect with them, but you don't have to actually follow their content. You can be following these other people who are building you up, who are, helping to just build your mindset and everything.
Totally. Absolutely. It's like, that's just the starting point, is finding a good place that you can control. Right, because that's the things we have to look at is like there's circumstances that you cannot control. It's like you're like the where you grow up, right, or like the family that you're born into, and things like that. And I have that story, right, and I don't want to divest. That's like a longer path that we would get into. But what I want to say is like there's things that you can control, especially with the way that technology is set up nowadays. And it's like you can access the same information that Bill Gates can access right now, right? One of the most wealthy individuals on the planet. You have the same access to information through the power of Google, and also YouTube. It's like you have your university built into your phone now, And so there's no excuses as to far as like the information that you submit into your mind is what ends up turning into results in your life. And so you have full control over what you're consuming on a daily basis, whether that's going to be like entertainment stuff that like just kind of puts you to sleep, where it's like the YouTube, the Netflix, the you know, and when I say YouTube, I'm meaning like the stuff that's like just the funny videos or the like you know, different things that's more labeled as entertainment than it is like a learning experience. Mm-hmm. And so it's like you got to make that choice every day of like what you're consuming, and what you're consuming will evolve into who you're able to surround yourself with.
Yeah, so true, man. So something I've been curious about, I saw this, I don't remember if it was on one of your social media platforms, but I saw that one of your, or rather your big mission in life, at least one of them, is to end world hunger. Mm-hmm. Can you explain why that's one of your missions?
Yeah, totally. So I come from a place where I have, you know, my parents were addicted to drugs when I was 14 years old. Started when I was 11 and got worse up till when I was 14. And, you know, this was in when I was in high school, like I was actually embarrassed to talk about these things, but now I'm so grateful. And I realize that those were like formative experiences that have completely changed my paradigm and my idea of like what life is about. And so I'm very grateful for those experiences. But one of the things that I, at that time in life, was missing out on was like, there was times where like physical hunger was something that I experienced. But more important than that was there were times where I was like spiritually hungry. I was emotionally hungry. I was like craving. My parents were there physically, but they weren't always there like mentally and emotionally. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, what I realize now today is like, I just mentioned this 2 minutes ago, is like when there are some people who don't have control over the lives that they're brought into, right? The families that they're born into, or the cities, the nations, whatever, you know, circumstances they're born into, that's uncontrollable. And I had, again, a huge radical change in my life when I was 19 and had a mentor who took me in almost as like a son and taught me these valuable philosophies or skill sets of like how to use the power of my mind. And I wish that could have happened sooner. I'm grateful it happened at 19. But now my focus has shifted to realize like a lot of the gifts that I've been given and the success that I've had is all to support helping other kids that came up in the same situations that I had when I was growing up. And to make sure that like not only are they fed physically, so when I say end world hunger, it's actually not just talking about like the food aspect of feeding people, but it's like feeding people. There's so many people who are starving for information, right? Wisdom. There's people who are starving spiritually, starving emotionally. And so what my focus is like getting to a point where I don't think I don't have a desire or a need to like end world hunger by 2025, right? Or to do it by 2035. There's like not a timeline. Like it might take 200 years and I may not be around to like see it fully come to fruition, but I know that I can create enough conversation in this lifetime to help have a lot of people join in on those efforts and that support. Because there's a lot of people who've gone through similar experiences as me. And so it's about teaming up with people who care about other people's life experience and really like investing into that. And so for me, that's actually what drives all of my motivations, my actions. And that's why I've been able to reach the height of success that I've gotten to at this point, is simply because my why, the vision, the reasons of my actions are really, you know, dialed in and focused. And so for me, it's like helping people not only eat physically, but spiritually, mentally, and emotionally is the cause that I'm committing to. And so all of my success, everything is tied to that one main passion of mine.
Dude, honestly, I absolutely love that. Because like you were saying, there are so many people who aren't just, you know, starving, you know, physically, but also, like you said, spiritually and like so many emotionally, mentally.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. So I'm curious, what are you doing right now to get that ball rolling?
Yeah. So up to this point, there's been a few different things. So I've been heavy in leading sales teams, sales organizations. And I, you know, got to the point first where I had to be a top producer. So I was in the top 5% of producers in my industry, and then went to the top 1%. And so I was, the difference between my production level and like the average person in our industry was I was doing double to triple of what they were doing. And like the top sales rep, I was always beating their income probably by 50 to 75,000, like just on a base level. And so for me, like that was the starting point, is like really getting to a place where I could get my money right? Because like, and this is probably something that I should preface, is like in our society, a lot of people have like a negative connotation or belief towards money. And this comes from how we're programmed in society, right? Growing up, we hear a lot of things, and you probably heard these as well. It's like a penny saved is a penny earned, right? Or like money doesn't grow on, how's that finish? Trees, right? So we all have these same beliefs, and it's at the subconscious level, which our subconscious level of our minds is what controls all of our actions. So we have to be very aware of like what has already been programmed through TV shows, through school, through family, through friends, all of those facets. And so really when it comes down to it, it's like once you can get a grip on understanding like where those things come into play in your mind, it's like it makes the whole path easier. So going back to the story is like after I became a top producer, right, and got my financial wealth to a place where like not only could I live comfortably, but I could start helping other people, right? Money allows for more impact. And so for me, like this is the biggest thing that hit me. One of my mentors said that being poor is selfish, because what happens is you can't think about anybody else besides yourself, right? If you're only thinking about paying your bills next month or next week, right? How are you thinking about anybody else's needs? But if you can completely automate and get all of your stuff in alignment, like all the basic needs that you need to cover, and get that completely set, right? You get to a place where now you can start thinking about, okay, what's next? Or more importantly, who's next? Who else can I help out? And so for me, that's where it started happening. And so I started to donate to a few different charities. One is called No Kids Hungry. And this is an effort where they are actually focusing on like the physical side of, feeding kids, making sure that kids have, if they can't afford, there's like, free lunch programs at school. Well, those same kids will have, be able to eat at school, but when they go home, they're not always guaranteed a meal. And so No Kid Hungry actually sends meals, sack lunches home with these kids. And so that's been a charity I've been donating to for the past 3 years that I've been very grateful to be able to support. And then over the past about 4 months, I've actually started to shift towards like my end goal, which is having my own nonprofit. And it's called Food for Thought. And there's 4 areas of facets that we're trying to feed people with. And it's not just kids, but it's anybody in those kind of circumstances where they're, lacking nutrients, we'll say, in different areas of life. And so it's like feeding kids physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. So those 4 pillars that I feel like helps people to actually find what they're really looking for, which is happiness. And for the past 4 years, what I've really been focusing on is developing the right kind of like curriculum, right? What are the right philosophies or teachings that people need to hear to call the best version of themselves out? And so, for the past 4 years, that's actually what I've been focusing on in sales. Is like I'm training door-to-door guys. At my peak, I had 65 people who are all 100% commission. There's no base salaries or anything that I recruited and was leading. And what I would do is practice helping them to see the bigger vision of themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's like helping somebody who's their money blueprint is $25,000 or $30,000 a year, right? When we ask them, what amount of money would you like to make this year to really feel like a win? And usually people are like, oh, if I can make 25,000 or 30,000, I'll be happy, right? And they don't realize that there's no, like, what you ask of life is what you're going to get. And it's not that, like, if you say 100 grand, there's no, you don't have to feel bad about that, right? Or 250, 300 grand, whatever it is. And so what we would do is, like, my greatest joy in the past 4 years is having somebody come in and think their money blueprint is 30K and then help them get to 75,000 or 100K or 150 grand, and seeing the shift in their own internal belief of who they are, right? And how they show up to the world. And so like this has been something I've been practicing in my current vehicle, right? Which is just door-to-door sales for an AT&T product. But like that's how committed I am to my vision, is like, I'm not just doing this job just to collect a paycheck. I'm doing this to hopefully change lives. And I know that, you know, in the practice of learning how to lead people, how to inspire people, is going to roll into like my longer term vision. And so I've been practicing in that realm, and now I'm going to be actually applying that into my own nonprofit and teaching kids how to think about themselves and their success.
That's awesome, man. You know, just listening to you right now and just during this whole time, I'm curious, are you, because I'm just thinking, like, if you're not doing this, I think you should start some, like, your own podcast or some kind of YouTube channel, because just listen, I think you have some really good thoughts that you could put out some videos on. And I don't know, I was just thinking, like, have you been doing that at all?
I appreciate that. So I've been on a lot of podcasts. I've done probably 3 already this year, and but I haven't made it a priority to do my own with all the things that I've been doing, you know, in business. And it's been a juggle where I'm trying to find the balance, because not only do I do those things that I mentioned, I've also been working with a group called Abundant, and we focus on coaching 6- and 7-figure sales individuals in different corporations, places like Square, Outreach, Compass, a bunch of large companies. And so I've had my hands in so many different moving parts. Mm-hmm. It's been hard to compartmentalize and like find the time to be able to create, you know, some content. And so that is going to be a shift. That is a focus for me over the next year. But it hasn't been something I've completely committed to yet. But I am, it's in the works for sure. So okay. I appreciate that compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, because I really think just listening to you, just kind of knowing a little bit about your background and the things that you've mentioned, I really think that some content, whether it's video content, podcast, whatever it might be, whatever, you know, you decide on, I think it really would have an impact on people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to ask a few more questions and then we'll wrap up.
Cool.
So what does an abundance mindset mean to you?
I think it's a great question, because I think this is where we can actually realize what's happening in society. Like even, especially right now, like we have this virus going on and a lot of people are, you know, fearful about that. But I think also like as a whole, if we look at the macro, the big picture of what's going on in the world, it's like there's 2 mindsets I think that control our actions and our outcomes in life. And that's either a scarcity mindset or an abundance mindset. And for me, abundance is always looking for the gift or for the positive in every situation, circumstance, opportunity, right? So it's like the things that happen to us are not what matters. It's actually how we respond to things that happen to us. And so we can look at it as like, I'm the victim. Why did this happen to me? This is why I didn't succeed. And, you know, we can have this negative outlook on different things that happen. Or we can have the mindset of like, where is the gift in this? So it's like, if you actually ask yourself that question, it puts yourself in a state of abundance, like instantly. And so it's like one of my mentors talked about how like you must create ways for abundance to flow to you and through you, right? And one of those ways is by asking yourself that simple question of like, what is the gift in this experience? So it's like, you know, for me, I might say, I'll give you a real-time example. So this happened to me my 3rd year in sales. I took a team out to Chicago. I had another team in Detroit and one in Los Angeles. And so I was a regional manager at that time. And I had one group who in Chicago, there was a leader who wasn't completely satisfied with the experience that he was having with the company that we were working for. And so what he decided to do was to leave, like just straight up quit. And I'm responsible at that time. I was responsible for all the housing. So we opened up apartments and houses for people to move into when we transferred to a different area. And so we had I believe we had about 23 to 25 people living in that area in Chicago. And he kind of created this trickle effect where we ended up having about 10 to 12 guys leave right after him. And I'm liable for all their housing. And so that year I ended up eating about $100,000 in costs on the housing. And it's easy for somebody to like say, hey, like I quit, like this is not what I signed up for, right? And for me, again, luckily by that time I was far enough in the game that I realized, and I'd started to have this mindset of like, what is the gift? And what I realized in that moment, this is the answer that came to like my mind at that time and completely changed how I was perceiving that experience. And I'm not going to say like it was easy. Like there was a lot of like fear around what was going on, right? But when I asked myself that question of what is the gift of this moment, I realized, and this is the thing that came to mind, was that like this $100,000 experience that I'm going through right now is saving me millions down the road. Because now I understand the type of people, the values that I want to align with, and the people that I want to really build with. And so it helped me to get far more clear about the type of leaders that I was recruiting. And I knew that like one day when I'm building my own business, my own company, it might be $1 million or $10 million amount of money on the line, right? So that sacrifice back then helped me in the long term. And so it's like, if I would have said like, whoa, me, like this is, I'm the victim here, which I easily could have done, then I probably would have not even gone out after that the next year, which I ended up having, doubling my income the following year. And so like always coming to the table with a mindset of like, there is a purpose for this experience that is positive. And I have to find the good in each experience. Doesn't matter what that experience is. There's always a positive light at the end of the tunnel, but you just got to look for it.
For sure.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, continue.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's the first aspect. And then the second aspect to me, abundance really comes down to like purpose. So it's like legacy would probably be a simple word to use. For me, it's like how I'm affecting other people financially, how I'm affecting their relationships, how I'm affecting them emotionally, and in the way of how they're growing through life. That matters to me. And so like I'm not only thinking about the experience of how my kids are going to experience the world, right? Like my kids are going to have a great lifestyle, but I'm also thinking about other people's kids and how I can help their experience be better as well. And so I think an abundance mindset is like getting out of thinking about yourself all the time, right? Which is often the cycle that we all go through. And like I still go through it, but it's like, how can you start thinking about more people beyond yourself? And it's great to start with your family. It's like start with your family, right? And you still have to have that personal self-care of like thinking about what's important to you, but it's like then start thinking about how can I influence my sphere, and how can I then broaden that sphere of people that I have influence over and help them to have a better experience in this lifetime. And when you start thinking about that, that's when you start tapping into, this abundance mindset of like, there's not just this finite amount of money in the world or finite amount of resources. There's enough to go around for everybody. And so abundance mindset is all about like seeing the bigger picture of like, there is no lack of supply. Like there's plenty to go around, plenty of love, plenty of happiness, plenty of money, success, everything. And knowing that you can help other people get more of all those things that they're searching for and commit to it. And so for me, it's like those abundance ties into both of those factors.
Perfect. So based on what you were saying, and for when you were younger, your teenage years and everything, would you say that you had to develop that mindset as you got older?
1,000%. Absolutely. And I'm still developing it. Right. And that still comes down to like the content I put in my mind every day. It comes down to the people I'm surrounding myself with. And it comes down to like the environments I'm putting myself in. Right. And so it's like abundance and really tapping into like the possibilities is something that I'm consistently moving towards and learning about. And so it's like, that was not my mindset when I was in high school at all. Like it was complete scarcity. Right. And so like the tables have turned and now I'm focusing on like how can I help other people to develop that same mindset? Because it's something you develop. It's not something you're born with by any means. It's a completely developable skill set to really put yourself in a state of abundance rather than a state of scarcity.
For sure. And, I just need to make a side note right here. For those listening, those watching this, it's kind of hard to articulate. Not that Shoney, at least in my eyes, not that Shoney was ever like a bad person or anything like that. I never, considered him, I was never thinking that he's going to end up in jail or anything like that. But it's just so interesting, just talking to you now, I don't even know, it's probably been 12, 13 years since I first met you.
Yeah.
And just seeing the change, like even just the change in just your demeanor. It's something that I really do love talking about. Just there's literally we are literally built for change. Like our brains have plasticity. They literally can change no matter what, like you were talking about with, you had a scarcity mindset. Now have a much more abundance mindset. And I think I just want to just put on record that, we can change. Shoney, I think right here is an example of someone who's changed and is continuing to change. And I just love that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that's like the underlying basis of like my message and what I like love sharing with people is that like who they were yesterday or 5 years ago or 10 years ago doesn't have to be the same person that they are today or tomorrow or 5 years from now. And so getting clear about like what ingredients you want to be a part of your life down the road, and like what in the form of, when I say ingredients, I'm meaning like what type of people you want to be surrounded by, how much income you want to be bringing in, the level of influence that you have and impact that you have on your society, in your network, and all those facets, like the level of happiness and gratitude that you have for life in the world. All of those things can be obtained, and it starts with like you seeing that version of yourself in your mind first. So it's like going through a practice, like really getting clear about like who do I want to be, and like what values do I want to stand by, and implementing those into your daily practice helps you to get closer to that version of yourself. It's just small changes. It's coming down actually this simple principle of like Einstein talks about, the compounding effect is the eighth wonder of the world, and or compounding interest, and it's not just like money that compounds. It's like your success, your growth compounds as well. So as you commit to like making these small adjustments day by day, you actually start to see the long-term aspect of that is a massive ROI in your daily actions. And so if I can preach anything to anybody, it's like really focusing on where they want to go and like just making small tweaks daily, day by day, and getting a little bit better. And, eventually you get to where you want to be.
Man, dude, I've been loving this interview. Like seriously. So last question, I'll let you go. I know you got to get going pretty soon, but what brings you happiness?
For me, the greatest joy comes from helping other people go through a process of transformation. And by that, what I mean is like the exact same process that I was, invited to step into when I was 19 years old, of radically changing who I thought I was and like changing the inner story of what my life could be. And so for me, it's like helping to see the click in somebody else when they realize that they could get anything they want out of life, right? They can become whoever they want to become, and see them start progressing towards that worthy ideal. And so for me, it's all about seeing other people's progress and, hopefully being an influence in their journey to make sure that they have like the I wouldn't say the easiest experience possible, because growth is not easy, but it's necessary to be able to have fulfillment, right? True happiness. And so for me, it's all about seeing people go from point A to point B, and then to point C, and then point D, and continuing down that path of like just simple progression, and seeing them look back on their journey and seeing that they've gone further than they thought they could have. And that's where I find my joy, my happiness.
Awesome. So I just need to squeeze one more question in. Because you keep mentioning, that basically 19, your volunteer, mission with the church, that really was the changing, the turning point in your life. I'm curious, why did you make that decision to do that, to serve a mission?
So I was a convert to the church. And, I mentioned some of the experiences I had with my parents. When I was 14 years old, my mother went to prison for 7 years. And I saw her about twice between then and the age of 21. And for me, the biggest thing was I saw the radical change that happened to my father, who's also a convert. That happened when I was 14 years old. That's when he came back into our lives. And it was luckily like perfect timing right when our mother went away. And so we got to move in with our father. And he was such a radically different person because of, his journey with Jesus Christ and his commitment to the gospel at that time. And I had saw and noticed that and I didn't notice this at that age, but I noticed it when I was 18, 19 years old. And I started to think about how would life be different if my dad didn't have that experience, if he didn't convert to the church, didn't have Jesus Christ as a mentor. And what I started to realize is my life would have been, I probably would have been in jail or on drugs or worse. That was the trajectory I was going on at the age of 12, 13 years old. And that's something I want to be honest and open about. And then, when I was 18, 19, I started to realize how that's when the crossroads changed for my life, was when I was 14 and my dad came back in my life. And so the biggest pain that I had was I had this question of if I don't go, who else might not get this experience that I've had? Who else might not be able to, have a radical change in their family's life that might impact them for years to come? And realizing all that I would have missed out on if another missionary wouldn't have taught my dad, right, about the gospel. And knowing that I didn't want to have that on my shoulders, for the next 20, 30, 50 years, knowing I could have made an impact in somebody's life. And for whatever reason, I decided not to commit to that, to that 2-year journey. And so I luckily had this deep sense of awareness of the two different paths my life could have turned out to be. And I was fully committed to making sure that other people didn't have to have that other, path because I didn't show up to my fullest capabilities. And so that's why I decided to go on a mission, was to serve other people and help other kids like me who may have gone through similar experiences, or just people who are going through pain of any sort.
Well, it's funny that's your answer, because I feel like that's what you are still doing. You're still trying to help people and still trying to make an impact so they can help their families and their families can turn around. And I feel like from everything you said, you're kind of still on a mission,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is the long mission. I've committed to a long-term mission, and it's one of I think, to put it as simple as possible, I just feel like there's a debt that I owe, and I don't think I could pay it back in the next 50 years. But it's the debt of somebody else. Multiple people radically changed my life by the way they showed up for me, and I'm committed to paying that back by doing the same thing for as many other people as I can.
Awesome, man. Well, I know you gotta get going, dude. I seriously feel like we could talk for another 2, 3, 4 hours. This has been great.
Totally.
So real quick, where can people find you on social media? On what, I know you got a website. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, shoneyivens.com. There they can sign up for my newsletter, which has a lot of value that I send out every couple of weeks. So that, I guess you can say, has been my method of podcasting. It's just written form. And I've nailed that down. So that's one way. Instagram, Shoney Ivens. Facebook, Shoney Ivens as well. So it's all the same stuff. Twitter, LinkedIn, everything is just Shoney Ivens. So it makes it easy for them to find me, and I would love to connect. So send me a personal message if you'd like.
Awesome, man. Dude, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Appreciate you.